we'll get going here in about 30 seconds. We're just letting everybody in from the waiting room. And so give us about 25, 30 seconds and we'll get going. So thank you for joining us. All right, I still see people trickling in. So again, we'll give it about another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll get started. All right, well, everybody, good morning or afternoon, depending upon where in the US you are at. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Scott Powell. I'm the Senior Vice President for the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. Program, will begin momentarily, but before we kick off, I'm going to cover a few, major housekeeping items. So first off, if you have any questions, there is the Q&A down at the bottom. After the panel, we'll address those. This will be recorded, and we will follow up and send out the recording to anybody that would be interested in viewing it again. But our program today will feature a panel discussion from several national practice experts from the Cushman Wakefield team who advise companies across the region on their real estate decisions. They'll be discussing current market trends and providing insights on how those impact the office market here in the Greater Sacramento region. And we're also very fortunate today to be joined by Brian Tenon, the CEO of HealthNet of California, and also a Greater Sacramento board member, who will provide a firsthand account on operating the Greater Sacramento region. So again, if you have any questions, please put them down below and we'll address them. But without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to also welcome another Greater Sacramento board member, Larry Kelly, who is the founder and chairman of LDK Ventures and is the president and CEO of McClellan Park. With that, Larry, the floor is yours. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure this morning. Again, my name is Larry Kelly. I'm a developer. You might know that as soon as I get started, the golf course maintenance crew drives by. But in any event, I got involved in GSAC very early on. I felt it was a really good strategy and platform for economic development in our region. And as a developer, that's a very important part of what we do. And with GSAC, bringing together our business leaders and our communities and the leaders within those communities, the mayors and councils of all these communities around our region being members of GSAC, we work together collaboratively for the benefit of the whole community. And I just felt like this strategy and method of doing economic development was a first in our area and would be tremendously successful. And I think it has, and it provides tremendous data and outreach to potential relocations and development opportunities for our community. This year has been something that in my 50 plus years of business has never been experienced by any of us. We just didn't see this coming. We didn't know the breadth, the depth of the impact completely. And it certainly caused a tremendous disruption in the way that we all live and work, and especially in our office community and from a business standpoint. Once this is somewhat mitigated by the vaccines and that, and if we can ever do to this what we did with polio and get back to normal, I think it'll be a new normal. And these things will that we've experienced will have a tremendous impact on the way that we work and the way that we do our business. The fact that we're on this call today is something that a year or two ago was really more of a unique experience or a one-time experience, not something you did every day in your business. And this last year has proven to us that we can do a lot of business this way. And I think it will affect a lot of things, all from travel and hospitality to business, office in particular. The thing that is, I think, is a tremendous opportunity for Sacramento is the effects that this has had on the fact that people can work remotely, that they don't have to be in the downtown major markets, that they can move to the local suburbs, they can move to other cities and still work. And we've seen that. I mean, recently in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, you've seen some of the data on the communities that are benefiting from people migrating to them from the large urban areas. And I think that, you know, it certainly had an effect on my business, but it's also, I think, a very positive opportunity to reimagine how we're going to do business. And particularly in places like Sacramento, where we have a tremendous labor pool, and the number of people that are leaving from the Bay Area because they don't want to leave California, but they still want to have their job in San Francisco or the Bay Area, and moving to Sacramento and the suburbs and downtown to work and live, I think will be a tremendous opportunity for us, particularly in our project downtown, the rail yards. We have a lot of things going on in the rail yards. We've already started the first multifamily project, 330 units. And we have a project on the drawing board that we're getting ready to start with. It's a 6-story office and retail building called the Foundry. And I'm going to let Ron Thomas talk a little bit more about this later, but the rail yards, we have the opportunity to develop 5 million square feet of office right next to one of the busiest rail locations in the western part of our country. We have a Capital Corridor train that goes all the way into San Francisco and back across the country, but we have housing right next to it. We have office right next to it. So people can live and work in Sacramento downtown for a much lower cost, and businesses can locate their satellite offices there. And we chose Cushman and Wakefield to do the marketing of this project because of their local office and the expertise they have there, but also because of the fact that they're not only a national firm, they have a huge presence in the Bay Area. And with that, they can reach out and bring us opportunities for satellite offices, for relocations, et cetera, at the Foundry project. And Cushman Wakefield's done a great job of putting together a marketing material and getting ready to go with that. And I'm going to let Ron Thomas talk about that. Again, this year has been a tough year for a lot of people, and depending upon what type of real estate you're in, it could be much more challenging than others. The benefit that's come to me this year is our industrial group has just done a tremendous amount of business. And I think, the fact that the industrial market has grown so much in Sacramento is also going to bring other opportunities for office. So we're very optimistic about what this next year brings. And I want to thank the team at Cushman and Wakefield for all the work that they put into getting us started on the Foundry, and look forward to working with them and getting this project off the ground here in the next 24 months. So I don't have anything else, Ron, but thank you and your team for what you've done. And we look forward to working with you to complete the Foundry successfully here in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. We too look forward to working with you and your team on the Foundry. It's certainly, we'll touch base on it more throughout the discussion here, but the 240-acre urban infill development that is really anchored by a transit hub is certainly something that is an asset to Sacramento, and certainly we believe will certainly be an attraction to companies looking to reassess their real estate footprint throughout Northern California and the West region. So we have a great group of panelists. I want to thank everybody for joining us again this morning. I'm going to do some very quick intros here on our panelists. cover the agenda, and then we'll jump right in on kind of the program for today. So our speakers today come from a wide background of expertise within Cushman Wakefield. We have Antonia Cardone joining us from San Francisco. She is Senior Managing Director and the America's lead for our workplace strategy for all of Cushman Wakefield. We have David Harris, also in the Bay Area. David's Executive Managing Director for our Global Occupier Services business, our enterprise business, large corporate occupiers for the Western region. And then joining us from Atlanta is Erica Reuter. And Erica is our Consulting Director and a national expert in labor analytics. And so this panel from Cushman & Wakefield will be speaking on a number of different topics that we'll show you here on the agenda. And then also today we have Brian Turnan, who will be joining us. Brian is the President and CEO of HealthNet of California. And Brian will be sharing some words with us as well. So today, as I mentioned, Erica is going to lead off with a discussion on labor analytics. And what that means is really kind of the migration trends that we are seeing, how COVID maybe has accelerated those trends, and then really how Sacramento is positioned to win in that war for talent and in that migration of a workforce, an educated workforce out of larger urban hubs into areas like Sacramento. Next, we're going to go into kind of how that affects the workplace experience. And Antonio is going to cover really what are these employees telling corporate occupiers, corporate tenants that they really want? Where do they want to work? How do they want to work? Where do they see themselves as it relates to the workplace going forward? And then David's going to kind of tie that in to his experience working with some of the largest corporate tenants in the region, actually, frankly, globally, and what they're doing now to prepare to return to work, and then really what might be the next steps that these occupiers start to look at in terms of really how do they expand, where do they expand as they look to possibly decentralize some of their large footprints, urban hubs to accommodate some of this migration that their employees have experienced over the last year or so. I'm going to touch on Sacramento, some of the key attributes that we feel, again, kind of set Sacramento up as a very unique kind of dark horse in this war for talent and these migratory trends. And then Brian's going to finish us off with really just kind of a case study perspective from a CEO of a Fortune company as to how they went about selecting Sacramento for a Western regional headquarters of 500,000 square feet with growth up to 1 million square feet, and some of the key takeaways from their process and what's worked. So that's our agenda today. We're excited to get going. Again, with that, I will kick it off to Erica to kind of jump right into our labor market trends.
Great, thanks, Ron. Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Reuter, Director in C&W's Strategic Consulting team, and I lead our labor analytics practice. So I do work across the US and internationally, focusing on helping companies identifying the optimal location for a new or relocating business. And most recently, as companies are starting to consider what's next, I've been advising our clients on the future of work and how it will impact their location and labor strategies. As a result of the pandemic, we're witnessing some major shifts and trends, and I'm going to touch on 4 of those today. The first is workforce migration. It's estimated that remote work will increase migration in the US. Between 14 to 23 million Americans are planning to move as a result of remote work. And what that does is it creates borderless recruiting. Now that employees are no longer tied as much to a physical office, skilled employees can become remote workers and eligible for a larger number of openings. It also provides flexibility. Workers will have more choice, so quality of life and regulatory environment will be prioritized. And all of this impacts corporate location strategy. So companies are now planning for reentry and repositioning their portfolios, but talent remains critical to success. So the data is still coming in, showing that workforce migration, but recently the census released statewide data from 2019 to 2020, population shifts. Citywide is not yet available from the census, but based on what we see at the state level, Sunbelt states, Texas, Florida, and Arizona are the biggest population gainers. And New York, Illinois, and California are at the top of the list of states with population loss. However, when we dive down to the city level, we start to see that across cities, there are various winners and losers as well. So even though census data is not yet available at the city level, we can use other sources, including here, we're looking at Redfin data to see migration trends across cities. And you can see here that the Sunbelt markets that appeared at the top of the list for the statewide migration are leading the pack, but Sacramento is actually fourth in terms of highest net inflow based on Redfin users' searches. The top origin to Sacramento is San Francisco, and the top out-of-state origin is Reno. So despite the shift out of the state, Sacramento is really performing very well. Borderless recruiting makes skilled employees less tied to a physical space. And so top talent is now eligible for a larger number of openings, which will likely drive wages up, especially as we continue to roll out the vaccine and see an increased recovery. But smaller low-cost markets are well positioned with still a sufficient volume, but a lower cost of talent. You can see Sacramento here on the graph provides a 20% wage differential versus the Bay Area. Also, flexibility. Workers have more choice, and this is affecting the impact and recovery. We've been looking at job posting activity to see how companies are responding across markets. And as you see the handful of markets on the page, the gray bars are April to December 2019. There was a drop in job postings for office positions across all markets. But then from April to December 2020, as some companies began to ramp up hiring activity again, Sacramento, Phoenix, and Nashville show the biggest percentage growth. Sacramento is at 56% increase in postings from April to December 2020. These trends all highlight that COVID has created the opportunity to rethink the workplace and the footprint. So our clients are asking us, how do our people work? Who comes back now? And how do we support that transition? Where do our people live and work? And where should we recruit talent and locate operations? And as a result of that, what real estate do we need? How much? What type of space? And how do we manage that footprint and flexibility? So we're currently talking to our clients about all these questions and helping them to address them and think about what's next in terms of location strategy and portfolio footprint. And I'll now hand it off to Antonia, who's going to cover people and experience.
Thanks, Erica. Good morning. here at Cushman and Wakefield, we've been watching what's been happening in the workplace for decades. And prior to that little virus that we see on the top right-hand side there, we understood that, our offices were being used, people actually sitting in seats about 56% of the time. So we were very curious to see what would happen with this work from home experience that we're in right now. We were beginning to talk about the office becoming more broadly considered as a variety of workplaces. So this idea of an ecosystem, and we were definitely out there in the industry talking about the shift that we had seen over the period past years. Once the virus hit, we recognized that we needed to make a pivot. And so we started immediately to talk about how we could best support people working from home, as suddenly that's where we all found ourselves. It was about that time that we recognized that our colleagues in China had actually got a jump start on us in this space and had already helped thousands of people, millions even, come back to the workforce. And so we also recognized that we needed some new tools to help us diagnose the experience of people through this working from home. So we created a diagnostic tool called Experience Per Square Foot at Home. And I'll be sharing with you today some of the results that we learned through that. Our Amsterdam team created the 6 Feet Office, which produced a video that went viral explaining and showing how we converted our Amsterdam office to be ready for the people to continue to work inside during this pandemic. And we joined the Well Living Lab. We produced documents about how to recover from this, and we've produced materials that talk about the future of workplace as we begin to think beyond just returning to work, but what is a reimagined workplace for the future. All of those materials are available for you to look at, but let me share with you on the next slide here some data that we've gathered from our diagnostic tool. So about 60,000 people have participated in this survey in 100 countries of 40 companies. And we learned some very key things, and the major metrics are illustrated on this slide here. Starting from the left, we've learned that we're still working quite well. 90% of people are feeling trusted to work remotely. But personal connections and learning from each other is suffering, and people are not feeling well. We no longer have the punctuation points of the commute in our day, and so our work day is stretching beyond, and we're not feeling well about that, sitting in the same place hour after hour. And surprisingly, our younger generations are struggling more. We didn't expect to find this data point, but we realize that they're struggling because of potentially caregiver responsibilities in the home, or incompatibilities with other people with whom they live. And the third element is that they don't necessarily have an ideal workspace at home. So we may have a young person sitting at the kitchen table, and the people with whom they live may be doing workouts with loud music, or sort of other incompatible functions in the home that mean that it's very challenging for some folks to continue working remotely. But overall, on the far right-hand side there, we see a very high proportion of people wanting some continuation of remote work policies beyond the return to office. On the next slide, we talk a little bit about what's happened in these metrics over time. So that data I referred to there, we began collecting it in summer last year. And since then, we've seen some shifts. On the left-hand side, a few metrics that have improved. People are reporting fewer challenges working from home. They've got used to it, solved a few problems, perhaps bought a monitor or something like that. Improvement in feeling that they're doing their best work. But on the right-hand side, we're seeing very significant drops in some key metrics that are outweighing those benefits on the left. Further drop in connection to the company culture, drop in the ability to bond with colleagues, that's that one-to-one relationship with the people around us, and a further drop in learning. So what that's sharing with us is that it's been an uneven distribution of experience. The next slide shows us that across a variety of functions, we see different experiences. On the left-hand side here, the gap between the diamond and the dot reflects functions that are challenged or struggling with the work from home experience. And these are the functions that very much rely on in-person activity, sales, colleagues strategizing together or meeting one-on-one with or in person with the client, HR, R&D analytics, think creative pursuits there, developing new products, etc. Versus on the right-hand side, teams or functions that have had very little difference, very little gap between the diamond and the circle there. So their ability to perform has not been hindered by going remote. And we might think about these functions on the far right-hand side as potentially those who could stay working remotely in future, or another way to think about them, potentially the last groups to come back to the office as we look at a phased return. So as we go on here and think about, well, what are the drivers for people to come back versus the drivers for people to stay working from home? And there are some key metrics on the next slide that help us look at that. Across the top there, we see the ones that help us believe that it's feasible for some people to remain working at home. They feel trusted, they feel informed by the company, they can focus and collaborate, and that they think that these policies should expand. But on the lower part of the page here, there are some key drivers for reasons why people should return to the office to improve their well-being, their learning, their connection to colleagues, and their connection to the company culture. So if we have both of these in play, we believe that in the long run, we see a continuation of both of these practices. And so on the next slide, we begin to talk about the idea of people being more flexible, this hybrid worker. The graph on the left shows us that the experience of engagement, a sense of engagement in the workforce, is lower when people come to the office all of the time and when they come to the office none of the time. So we see those higher scores in the middle with people who have some flexibility to move between those two states. And on the right-hand side there, we certainly see an increase in the number of people who are expecting this hybrid experience to increase beyond this pandemic experience. So moving forward then, as we think about both of these things being in play, some people in the office, some people working from home, and others coming and going between, we know that the current work from home experience is not sustainable and is already showing signs of deterioration. Our latest data is beginning to point to that, and that there are functions relying on face-to-face interaction that are suffering without being in the office. And thirdly, that we need our place to bring people together, reinforce culture, learning, and innovation. So expect the development of this idea around the workplace being an ecosystem of places where people have variety and choice available to them. So that's the main finding. Let's hear from David a little bit about how occupiers are actually seeing their future.
Thank you, Antonia, for sharing the workplace research and insights into long-term impacts of working from home. So my team supports enterprise clients, and we provide a variety of services, facility management, project delivery, portfolio strategy, lease administration, and space planning services. The logos shown on this slide represent some of the clients in the West region. And so what I'm going to do is summarize the activities supporting our clients during the pandemic, return to office plans, and the potential implications of real estate location strategy. Since the outbreak, and we can stay on that slide, please. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus, our teams have really been focused on mitigation measures in partnership with our clients to ensure a safe working environment for their employees to function. Those mitigation protocols, they're available on our website, and feel free to download much of the collateral that we've created and learned along the way. Although much of the news headlines are really focused on employees working from home, there's still a small percentage of employees that have been deemed essential that have continued to access office buildings and facilities throughout the pandemic. For our tech clients, it's one of the reasons you haven't really seen any diminished services and cloud applications or only slight delays in product development is because employees, and for example, hardware engineers, continue to come into the facilities to access key infrastructure and testing equipment. Those are roles that they cannot do from their home. And we have similar demands for functions in financial services and healthcare. And for all those employees and our clients, we support those environments and have been making sure that they remain safe, doing the work that is so critical for those enterprises. And maintaining a safe environment is paramount. And that focus on safety, we don't see going away anytime soon. The vaccine rollout and reduced governmental restrictions will enable our clients to increase the percentage of employees allowed to return to the office. But as you just heard, the surveys have uncovered that, prolonged and continued remote working is a challenge for many of the employees. The absence of the workplace has affected their ability to collaborate and innovate, which is so core to many of our clients. The ability to promote their corporate culture and to transfer knowledge, to have the younger employees learn from their older ones. It's really been challenging under the current constraints. Those casual collisions that we're so used to seeing at work, those are all replaced by 30-minute Zoom meetings, and it's just not sustainable for many people. So many of our clients at this point have announced that they're going to return to the office sometime this fall. And I think they've recognized that they needed to announce their intent. A number of employees have taken advantage of remote working. Many have left expensive big cities like San Francisco, and they're going to need time to plan to return. The feedback that we're getting from our employees is there's continued demand for the ability to work remotely at least some portion of the week. And so for most of our clients, what's emerging is this desire to create this new hybrid workplace, which is a combination of shared seating, optimizing collaborative spaces, coupled with continued support for remote working or work from home. At this point, it's too early to understand which designs will emerge as the new work standard, or its impact on office demands, or ultimately, how employees are going to adapt to this new blended model. I think one of the things that's been pretty clear with this experiment, when everyone's working from home, it's quite easy to use the tools and get this sort of effectiveness that some people have experienced because, for much of us, it's a level playing field. We're all sort of working remote. We all sort of come together, on video conferences. I think it's going to be quite different when you will see clusters of employees back at the workplace and then some people joining in remotely. So we'll see how it all lands. And then from a real estate perspective, that hybrid workplace is going to have a fundamental impact on location strategy. Traditionally, we live where we work, but without the daily expectations of being in a physical office, employees can live much further away from a hub. And that's just fundamentally going to change the dynamics in locating facilities close to dense labor pools. And as Erica mentioned earlier, Sacramento has experienced kind of a positive net inflow of talent, which could be a precursor to demand for corporate satellite locations. I think since the outbreak, we've seen a number of clients freeze hiring, delay the acquisition of office space, shift to shorter term lease renewals. Cost containment and flexibility were the driving factors. But as we got to the back part of last year, Q3, Q4, we started to see kind of an uptick on headcount growth. Now, it's had little impact on space demands because many of us are still working from home. But I suspect as our clients deploy the sort of new workplace models and they're able to safely support critical masses of employees returning to the office, they will start shifting their focus to addressing their portfolios and reevaluating their office demands and location strategy. The exact pace and timing is a bit opaque, but the war for talent is not over. And the access to labor markets and quality universities, transportation, customers, affordable housing, quality of life, those are still going to continue to be the main drivers for location decisions. And I think Sacramento ticks, most of the boxes and is pretty well positioned for growth. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ron Thomas to take a deeper dive into the Sacramento market.
Great, thanks, David. I will do that. So how does all this, what we've heard from Erica and Antonia and David, really, how does that kind of translate? Like, how do we kind of bring this full circle to Sacramento? I failed to probably introduce myself, but I run Cushman Wakefield for the Sacramento region, oversee all brokerage. So, I've been in this market for my entire career, 25 plus years, grew up here, went to college here. So I have kind of a fundamental historical perspective on our market. And I think what's really exciting for us to see now is this inflow that Erica touched on of new talent. And this is kind of migratory, net new talent to the workforce. These are not typically folks who are retiring to this community. These are folks who are moving here who are educated and in the workforce. So, in the Sacramento market, one of the things that David alluded to that I think corporates look at heavily in terms of some of their decision making is there a labor pool, right? Is there an educated labor pool? So we have almost 390,000 college students in four-year universities, kind of within a 100-mile radius, and you see some of the names here that we typically pull from. About 79,000 technical skilled workers in either technology or life science. And 15% of those workers attended either California State University, Sacramento, or UC Davis. And then if you kind of look on the top right, 52% of all employees with a four-year degree those degrees are in science, a STEM degree. So I think it bodes well, and that number is increasing as this migration pattern continues. Next slide, if you could, Olivia. So where do these workers live? Sacramento is relatively spread out, but as you can see, the bulk of these employees are residing within Sacramento. But up in Folsom and up in Roseville, where Intel in Folsom has over 1.3 million square feet, and Roseville is home to HP and Oracle, we see another kind of cluster of those tech and life science employees. And again, here's a breakdown on the right-hand side of really some of that skilled labor that does reside here in Sacramento. Again, kind of taking a broader view for those of you not real familiar with Sacramento, and again, somewhat of a dark horse, we do have some top technology companies already here and continuing to grow in Apple, Micron, Accenture, IBM, HP, Intel, and then Sentient, obviously here, not a technology company, but a large portion of their workforce here is in the kind of corporate IT space. And then as well below, life sciences really starting to emerge as the market's kind of connecting with both UC Davis Med Center and the things happening at University of California, Davis campus in Davis around food science, agricultural science. So really some nice synergies and an attraction for industry in those spaces here. Next slide, Olivia. Again, no secret, quality of life, which we beat this drum in Sacramento for a long time, but it is now, I think, really starting to play out. There's a talent story here, there's an educated workforce story here, but there's also a great quality of life story here. As you can see, Sacramento is kind of in that space of Denver, Portland, Salt Lake City, Austin. The median home price significantly below our neighbors in the Bay Area, and additionally, so are the rents for those millennials who are not in the space to buy a home yet. And I think it's worth noting that as it relates to downtown and the core, Larry touched on the rail yards and their project that has just kicked off. We have over 1,800 housing units that have been developed, brought online in the last 5 years, and another 2,200 under construction just in the urban core of Sacramento right now. So it puts us really at 4,000 homes either under construction or brought online, and that's great. That's servicing the 90,000 plus daytime workers that come to work in downtown Sacramento specifically for that kind of urban experience. And 80% of those folks that come downtown, they have a commute that's under 30 minutes. So it's a very accessible urban core and affordable urban core, which, as we know, is something that, I know that the workforce looks for, certainly a younger workforce. So, go ahead, next slide. So I'll touch briefly on two projects that are underway. And that developers here have placed large bets on. The first one is Aggie Square, which is Wexford Science and Technology and UC Davis. We're fortunate to be working on this as well. And you can go next slide. The connectivity here is, as you can see over on the right, the site is next to the UC Davis Medical Campus and 20 minutes away from a UC Davis College in the town of Davis. Next slide. The first phase will be approximately 1.2 million square feet of life science and technology. This will be under construction Q1 to Q2 of 22, so next year. And what you see there on your screen are three buildings that will be life science technology focused, anchored by the University of California, Davis, all around stem cell, regenerative medicine, cell therapies. So a really exciting project for Sacramento in that life science space. You can keep going, Olivia. Just a couple more visuals. And then the next slide here really kind of illustrates the rail yards. And as Larry mentioned, this is a transformative project for Sacramento in so many ways, but it's 240 acres. So on the scale of things, it almost doubles our entire downtown core, up to 5 million square feet of office to be developed, with the first 300,000 square feet in planning. Kaiser Hospital is identified 18 acres for a 1.2 million square foot medical campus. Sacramento's been awarded Major League Soccer franchise. That stadium will reside in the rail yards adjacent to the riverfront, urban parks, housing, which is under construction, retail, and then in the middle of that is a transit hub for Amtrak that connects folks all the way along the corridor to Emeryville, Berkeley, San Francisco, and all the way into San Jose. So very exciting project. We're excited to be part of it. You can go to the next slide. There's kind of the overall kind of scale in relation to downtown Sacramento. You can just kind of see how large the rail yards project is and why there's a lot of excitement around that project and so many of the different parts that will ultimately evolve and be developed here over the next couple of years. Next slide. You can go to the next one. These are really just some rendering, some representatives of the office building, the foundry, heavy timber, 300,000 square feet. Keep going, Olivia. And some interior visioning. So With that, Sacramento, I think, is very well positioned on a number of fronts to capture this incoming migration of workforce, and then hopefully ultimately kind of this hub and spoke model of folks looking at, as HR assesses that migratory pattern, to really understand that maybe they need to be locating a larger footprint in Sacramento. And firsthand, I think it's great to be able to hear now from Brian at HealthNet and their journey through identifying Sacramento as a major hub for their operation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian Turnin.
All right, thanks, Ron. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, gotcha.
All right, great. Well, welcome everybody. I'll be brief here, but a little background on Sentient, and you may hear in California more about HealthNet, but Sentient acquired HealthNet in 2016. Sentient is focused mainly on government-sponsored healthcare, so Medicaid programs, Medicare, individual marketplace. In California, we also market directly to employers and help them with their health insurance programs. So Sentient is a Fortune 50 company, 65,000 employees nationwide, based in St. Louis. In California, we have approximately 7,000 employees and about 3,000 in the Greater Sacramento area. So Sentient was looking for a West Region headquarters. It would be, a home for our employees that work in the California Health Plan, but also home for corporate functions based in the West. So functions like IT, accounting, health administration, pharmacy management, behavioral health management, things like that. The state of California is our largest state in the West, so we do have a strong commitment to California. When we were thinking about priorities for a location, we wanted a home for our growth in those key positions that I mentioned. We wanted to consolidate some of our dispersed locations in the Greater Sacramento area, and we wanted to focus our new hiring in this location. So as people leave in other locations around the state, we wanted to focus our new hiring in a market that where we could be successful. So we looked at Sacramento and we saw a very educated labor market, a diverse workforce, favorable cost of living relative to other locations in Northern and Southern California. Moving everyone into one space gives us a lot of cultural advantages. We can really instill the Sentient HealthNet culture when everybody's together like that. And we have a commitment to growing our workforce in the markets that we serve. And California is a key market. Sacramento, being the capital, had a lot of appeal as well. When we thought about site selection, the site we chose is right off I-5, right near the old Sleep Train Arena, couple of exits from the airport. So we saw that as having excellent freeway access. It was a very viable commute option for folks all around the area. Clearly gave us easy access to an international airport. In that area in Natomas, there are cycling trails, walking trails. There are nearby residential options for people to live very close to the office. We also found a space that had room for a childcare center, an on-site health clinic, an on-site pharmacy and fitness center, things like that. So phase one of our project there is open. There's very few people there right now, just our essential folks, but it's 540,000 square feet. It's 2 4-story buildings. In the future, we have the option to add an additional 3 buildings like the 2 that we have. So right now we have capacity for about 2,500 employees in that location. And we have the option to go up to 7,500 and have over 1.2 million square feet. So we are working on our return to work strategy, return to office strategy. We're targeting September to start phasing people in our planned reentry there. So the last thing I'll say, and then we can open it up to questions, is that we worked very closely in this whole process with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. And GSEC worked with the city of Sacramento and other regional partners to create a $13.5 million incentive package for us, equating to about $9,000 per job. And this project was expedited through the planning and approval phases to meet Sentient's required timelines for occupancy. So really appreciate the help that we got from GSEC in this project. Ron, turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you joining us, and appreciate the words. At this point, Scott, I think we are right on schedule with about 10 minutes for Q&A. These things never work out right on schedule, but no surprise with these folks on the phone. They nailed it. So if there are questions that are directed to any of the panelists, happy to take those and answer them.
Sounds great, Ron. Actually, we do have one question, and Brian, the question is for you. So I'm going to call you back out of the dark. And as Brian's coming back on camera, it was an absolute pleasure for the Greater Sacramento Economic Council to work with Brian and HealthNet to bring in all those tradable sector jobs that are really going to have a ripple effect on the regional economy for generations to come. So, Brian, we got this question from Mark Haneke with the, I believe he's with the Sacramento, International Airport. And his question is, do you envision Sentient employees traveling primarily to and from the headquarters in St. Louis, or to and from other cities as well? And if so, which cities?
Yeah, so some of us definitely back to St. Louis. I think our most frequent trips would be Burbank. We will maintain, we have and will maintain a presence in Woodland Hills. And so, like I said, over time, we expect we'll lose people in Woodland Hills, we'll hire people in Sacramento, but over time, we'll do a lot of that Sacramento to Burbank trip for meetings within the California team.
Great. And just kind of a follow-up question on that. When do you anticipate, and I know it's a crystal ball question, of that travel going back and forth to begin again, or has it already?
No, it has not. I anticipate that it'll start picking up in September for sure, as we start bringing people back to the office. Right now, St. Louis does not want us to come there, so I'm disinvited. But I think over time, as we start to open up the offices for people to come back in, that travel will pick up. And certainly we're, considering that if things change with the color status in some of our counties and people are comfortable coming back in and we're allowed to come back in, we may accelerate that. But at this point, we're planning on September.
Great. Looking forward to September when we can all be back in the office. You heard it here first. Brian and the Cushman Wakefield team said we can all come back in September. So with that, again, thank you very much for that question. And, to follow Ron's great example, we're right at time. So we got about 5 minutes left. And so with that, thank you for the question. And to close out our webinar, I'd really like to introduce the newly elected mayor of West Sacramento, Martha Guerrero. And she's also a member of our board of directors, and she'll provide some closing thoughts.
Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and thank you to both the Greater Sacramento Economic Council and Cushman and Wakefield for convening this timely and informative webinar. West Sacramento has enjoyed a long and fruitful partnership with GSEC. With their help, we have made West Sacramento a destination for a diverse range of industries, including food and agri-technology, international trade, manufacturing, and transportation and logistics. But the individual successes of its member jurisdictions are only part of the GSEC story. Just as significant is the way this organization unites the region to look beyond parochial boundaries and reach prosperity for the many diverse communities of the region. Looking forward, as we emerge from the pandemic and its economic fallout, we know that by working together strategically under the Greater Sacramento banner, we can rise together. And in that regard, today's discussion was particularly appropriate. We're excited to see what the advent of an increasingly remote workforce and the accompanying economic changes will mean for West Sacramento and the region. We believe we are uniquely prepared for this talent shift because the city's investment in some of the most well-designed and carefully planned neighborhoods, minutes from regional job centers, entertainment, major transportation, and shopping, all on a beautiful waterfront setting. These innovative districts have blossomed due to the city's decades of zoning and deindustrialization efforts and collaborative public-private partnerships. It is for those reasons that state, federal, private, and local smart growth investors continue to support the exciting new growth happening in these neighborhoods. New residential, commercial, and hotel development underway is supported by city investments in extending the Riverwalk north of the I Street Bridge, new dock and public art in the Washington District, and roadway extensions and new bicycle facilities in the Bridge District near the barn. Micro-mobility options, including rideshare on demand, along with electric bikes and scooters, have promoted connectivity across the river in our shared urban core, which is rapidly growing in population. 2 new pedestrian-friendly bridges are in design, connected by new tree-lined pedestrian paths infused with art experiences on both sides of the river. These efforts have West Sacramento poised to accommodate not only the needs of the quickly growing companies, but the needs of their employees as well. Today's conversation demonstrates the importance of regional partnership and collaboration in realizing the shared vision for a region with a dynamic talent base, a thriving business climate, and a welcoming demeanor. In other words, a region on the rise. Thank you again for joining today's program, and have a great day.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Want to thank all the panelists and GSAC for helping us put this together. Thank you to all the attendees who joined this morning. Have a great day and look forward to seeing you in Sacramento.
All right, take care, everybody.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Well, nice meeting you all.
Thank you.